Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our live session today. My name is Larissa. I'm an event planner at Reactor, join you from São Paulo, Brazil. Before we start, I have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. This session is being recorded and will be available to view on demand here on the Reactor YouTube channel within 48 hours. Keep an eye on the chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenter to answer. I will now turn it over to our speaker for today. So let's welcome here Bethany.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. As our presenter Larissa said, I'm Bethany, and this is a series part of the MCP Bootcamp. This is, I'm guessing, session 3 around how you can integrate your MCP with LLMs. As I've mentioned, I'm Bethany Chumba. I work here at Microsoft as a cloud advocate. And the first thing I always want to say is, hey, can you share with us where you're joining from? And I've just seen from the chat, everyone is already doing that. So we have someone from the US, someone from Bangalore, India. We have someone from Banjul in Gambia, which is interesting. I've never met someone from Gambia. And then we have someone from Turkey, we have UK, we have Sydney, Australia. So I'm very, very happy for you to be joining us here today. We have also someone from Istanbul. Yeah, welcome. I am from Kenya, and I'll be taking you through this session around how you can integrate your LLMs, your MCP with an LLM. And basically, I'll start by doing an introduction of LLMs. I know you already know what they are, but I just want you to figure out why they fit in the entire process. We'll also talk a bit about agents before diving into MCP. And then at the end, we'll have a demo showing you how exactly you can integrate your LLMs into your MCP server and the different use cases you can be able to implement, right? So if you want to integrate directly using VS Code, if you want to integrate using GitHub Copilot, or if you want to just run with other extensions or toolkits that are available. Yeah. So as I've said, I'll do a small introduction with an idea of where LLMs came from and how it helps in the entire process. So the idea behind this is you've learned how to build your own MCP server, you've learned how to build a client, and you've learned how to be able to have them all integrate and have them used as a tool, but you've never added LLM capabilities to it. So the idea behind this is for you to be able to, instead of you communicating to the MCP client for it to do something, you can use an LLM for it to give you an idea of where it can be able to integrate. And the first idea is just understanding how LLMs work. So LLMs just use natural language input. And the idea behind it is you have a model that goes through the different tokens and tries using probability distribution to give you an output based on that. So when you're using an LLM, you can be able to build autonomous agents, right? So an LLM will be able to interpret what the user is asking and then be able to now perform a task based on that. And agents have different components to it, right? So an agent can have different tools that are probably actions or knowledge that an agent is supposed to do. An agent also has different inputs. So the input might be a user asking a question or basically a system event. So you can have it be like a trigger. And then the output will either be something, an agent message or results from a tool. And the results from a tool might be, for example, if you have it do something, it will perform an action, right? And then the idea behind MCP is to be able to combine all these tools into one protocol to be able to help you as you call onto them. So tools can be probably your knowledge database, probably an action or things you want it to perform. And then it can also be memory. So if you've been chatting with the LLM for a while, and it can be able to go back and refer to what happened previously. Like if you had previously asked a different question, it can be able to go back to memory and be able to trace that back and give you a response based on both the memory and probably the knowledge that it has. That's basically how agents work in a very brief overview, right? So the idea behind MCP is how to be able to give this agent, basically not necessarily an agent, but basically any AI application, how you can be able to give it context. And what MCP is, you've probably had this description before. It's a protocol that helps you connect your AI models to different tools, API, and context. So, for example, if someone says play a song by someone, the entire protocol, the servers, and everything will work together, look at the different tools it has, and perform the action based on what you want it to do. The reason why we came up, MCP, the model context protocol came up was because we realized when you're building an agent, right? So you have probably an agent let's say a call center agent, right? So it needs access to the database, right? It needs to know who exactly is this user, what have they bought before, right? And then it needs to be able to perform actions. So if it can be able to create a ticket or log information, and then it needs to have a bit of memory. So if the user comes back again, it needs to be able to remember this user, we fixed this issue before, and this is what you're doing now, right? So the problem was you might need a lot of tools, right? A lot of tools might come into play. You might need probably each to create a ticket. You might need it to access your database, and you have database in different areas. You might need it to access memory, and so on and so forth. So that's how MCP came in, to be able to now unify the whole process. So instead of you calling the tools one by one, you just call to the server, and it now determines what tools it's supposed to use. And then the other bit about MCP is I normally say most of the terminologies used in AI are very literal in terms of what the idea behind the MCP is: the model, context, and protocol. The protocol is the standard, and then the context is the tools and the context you provide, right? And then the model is the different AI applications. So the idea behind an MCP server is basically it's a unified standard, a unified protocol that gives context to your different AI application. So that's the simplest way you can remember what an MCP server is. And most people refer to it as a USB-C. So in all the different tools that you probably want to connect, like let's say I'm connected, my laptop is connected to my different screens using a USB cable, right? So that's the same way an MCP server helps you. In terms of an MCP helps you in terms of it can be able to connect all the tools and all the resources that you need. And then the other bit is the entire architecture of how it works. So we have an MCP host, and the host is different programs, either your IDE that's probably VS Code or your different AI tools. And then you have the client. So the client is what now maintains the connections with the server. And then you have the MCP server. The MCP servers are now what expose your programs to different capabilities of the MCP, right? So if you have probably a calculator tool, if you have a database, if you have access to the internet, the MCP server is what will expose all this to you. And then the question would be now, where does LLMs come in, right? So for LLMs, where exactly they come in is you have your MCP client and your MCP server. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat while trying to explain, which I don't think is the best idea. But let me answer one of the questions. Is there a common prompt that we may use to allow an LLM to return its system card? Unfortunately, that is not something I can tell you or I have any idea about. So yeah, I think the answer is no. Yeah. Okay. So how LLMs fit in is you have your MCP client, right? So, and then you have your MCP server. So the server is what controls or exposes the different tools, resources, and prompts that you have in your MCP, right? That's the MCP server. And then the client comes in and talks to the server to be able to understand what are the different tools and capabilities that are there. And then you add in your your LLM. I'll show you how it comes in. But then again, you have your MCP clients. You may have one or numerous clients, depending on what application you use. So you can have GitHub Copilot, you can have Windows Copilot as your clients, and then the host will be probably your VS Code or Windows. And then the different MCP servers will be probably now GitHub, will be probably Microsoft Docs, will be probably Azure, and so on. So each of the servers give you access to something. They can give you access to probably a data source, access to your cloud files or systems, access to probably GitHub models, or even access to the internet, right? And then how an LLM will come in is how it works is the client will call into the MCP server. Let me show you the grammatically, then go back to the explanation. So we have the server, which has all the tools in there, right? So we have probably it has a GitHub access to probably your GitHub repo. It probably has access to, let's say, something like Spotify. It has access to your emails. It has access to data, right? So what happens is the client will go to the server and request what tools are currently available, right? And then it will give you an idea of, okay, these are the tools that we have. Probably we have Microsoft Docs available, and then we have Spotify, and then we have GitHub, and so on and so forth. And then what happens is when a user comes in to ask a question, it will go directly to the LLM. So if I want the LLM to play a song, I just ask the LLM, can you play the song? So the LLM will go into the tools and check, does it have a tool to play a song? Let's say something like Spotify, is it connected to Spotify? And then it will now return the response back to the LLM. The LLM will give you a response and then the action will be committed. So if the tool is there, it will decide what tools to use. So as I mentioned, it will first go in. The client will go into the server and try and see, okay, what are the different lists and what are the different tools and inputs available. Then it will have them cut. And then when the user asks a question to the client, so the user will ask the question to the client, the LLM will now go in and try, plan, and figure out, okay, what tools do I have available? What exactly do we need to give back to the LLM? And it will return it to the LLM. And then the LLM will decide whether the client calls the tools and returns the result. So the final answer will be probably a response from the LLM, and then again, probably the LLM performing, the tool performing a specific action. I hope that makes sense. So if you have any questions, I don't have a lot of slides. So these are all my slides before I go to the demo. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. But that's basically how the LLM plays a role. So basically, it just comes in to help you figure out, okay, what tools do we need? Do I need to call that tool? And how do I respond to the user? Again, the user does not interact directly with the server. So the user interacts directly with the client. So the question is definitely a bug security risk if at all you end up giving access to GitHub, to your GitHub report to the LLM. Yeah, definitely. So I'm just giving examples, but yes, you shouldn't give access to your. But then the the LLM does not have direct access to your tools. The idea behind it is you use the LLMs to access the tools. It does not basically, it cannot basically have the tool work without the tools being in the client. How may we best practice optimize? So the question is by Carnegie is asking, how may we best practice optimize the tool use? Finding the right model is hard. How may we, I don't get the question. Is it optimizing the different tools to use, or is it finding the model? Can you ask the question again? Where can I find the presentations from these sessions? Everything is on GitHub, so I hope you can is on the Reactors YouTube channel, so you'll be able to get access to everything on this channel, all the recordings and everything. So yeah, that's the best place I can recommend. Do you have an MCP server as an offering in Azure or still in preview? I think it's still in preview. Yeah. So Carnegie is asking, reducing the cost to call the LLM. So basically, the idea is to be able to figure out how easy is it to use the tools. Like if you have a couple of tools, how can you reduce the tools to be able to, like the prompts, if someone asks prompt something, how can they get it to call the tool immediately without necessarily having a back and forth or things like that? Yeah. When does the tool discovery happen? So first of all, as I've mentioned, the client will go in and request from the server what tools are available. So that's the idea behind the client, just getting to know what tools are available. So these are like, okay, these are the available tools. So when a user asks a question to the LLM, it will go in and check the available tools to see if they are relevant to the question asked and then give a response. That's when the tool discovery happens. Can you still guide the model in your prompt to try and use a certain tool? Yes, that's one of the best practices I've listed here. So this is creating boundaries with your LLM. So like if you want it to do something specifically, you can create a boundary with your LLM. Can you still guide the model in? Yeah, that's I've answered. For testing purpose, where is the best place for the MCP server to reside? So for me, most of them are just in my VS Code. So that's now my host. Okay, so let's go to the demo. And this is 100% just integrating the MCP with LLM. So if you're here in the last session, we had a small demo around, let me see if I can get it. So, server.py. So this was our zooming in. So this was the demo we had last time where we've created an MCP server using past MCP. The server is called demo. And then we have a tool. So this is our tool. We just wanted to add two numbers, right? And then the idea behind it is we also have a resource. So the resource is a greeting, just point to greet and then get from the data probably someone's name. So if someone has added in their name as a resource, we can be able to do the greeting, right? So the client for this looked like the client.py. This is a code for the client. So the client it's running, the command is MCP, the argument is server.py. So that's the STD. We're using stdio for the connection. And then this is how we define the connection, the transport system. So basically it will list the resources available, list our tools, and then it can be able to call the tool. So if I go to terminal, new terminal, and then run this file, that's the server.py, Python server.py. Oh no, MCP Python server.py. The output will be probably, let's see. Interesting. So the output is supposed to tell me like what are the available servers that we have. Not sure why it's not running, but the output should be these are the different tools available. So it will tell me these are the tools that we have available, which is adding two numbers, and then it should be able to return the number, and then the resource will be this. Okay, I'll figure out why it's not running. So then the idea behind it is to now add an LLM, a client.LLM, a client, an LLM client. So it's still the same code. We're using stdi to run everything. And then here is when we're defining what our LLM should look like. So we define our LLM and then, did I define? No, I haven't defined the LLM. So we'll need to define our LLM. And then once we've defined our LLM, it should be able to give us an output. So let me try and see if I can be able to define the LLM. 1 second, because I need to add the LLM file here. And then once that's added, I can be able to go in and give you a response from that. 1 second. Okay. Okay, so I'll use Azure. I can either use Azure or I can use GitHub models. So I can use Azure, and first of all, I'll need to import OS, and then the next bit will be to import the Azure library that I need. So from Azure .ai.inference, import chat completions. And then the next thing I want to import is the Azure credentials. So from Azure, inference, I can inference models. I can import the system message and the user message. And then the last bit is from Azure. I can import the Azure key credential, and then I'll probably need to import this one as well. Yeah. And then for the servers, the commands are good. The environment and everything is good. So I'll need to define the LLM down here. Should I define it before or after? Oh, okay. So I'll need to define the LLM. So I'll do a new command, define call_LLM. And then the token, I'll just use GitHub model. So os.environ, and then I'll use a GitHub token. So you can use whichever authentication that you need. The best one to use, this is just a demo scenario. The best one to use is just log in with your Azure key credential and do easy login, and then log in with your Azure account and have that and use that instead. So I'll use GitHub token. And then the next bit will be, so I'm just giving you the options of how you can be, different ways you can be able to add in your, different GitHub, let me just copy this. You can be able to use a different model. So this is the endpoint for the GitHub models. And then the next thing will be defining which model I want to use. So, I made an error. So what do I need in this function? I need the prompt and then the functions. Okay. And then the next thing is the model name. So for this example, I'll use GPT-4o as the model name. And then what else do I need? I need to connect to the client, the chat completions client. Yeah, that's okay. What else do I need? I need for it to print calling the LLM and then give me a response. Client complete. And then it should give me the messages. No, messages, which is, yeah, so the message will be probably, yeah, this one. Is it okay? Yeah, that's okay. And then from here, what else? I'll need to also have the model name here. No, the model down here, and then the tools. So the different functions, I can add in other definitions of the model, things that I probably want it to do. And then I can be able to also, once this is done, I can be able to get the response from the messages. So the response will be, the response message will be response. Yeah, so that's the response I'm probably getting from the LLM. And then the functions to call. Let me erase all this. Function to call will be the different functions. Yeah. And then the last bit will be if the response message, the response message tool calls, underscore calls, for tool call in, yeah, working with GitHub Copilot, message tool, for tool call in response message tool calls, which will print the tool name. So basically printing what tool it calls. So tool, and then the tool call. Then what else should it do? It should give me the name. So the tool, the function name, then what else am I missing? So it will also give me the JSON. Yeah, just do the JSON loads, and then, yeah. That's better. Yeah. So basically, the idea behind this is to just add in the LLM. So it should be able to call the LLM, add it in the models, and then it should be able to go in and give me the response of the tool. So I'm trying to figure out what tool to call append response message. It should call this print. So it should print the tool. It should give me the name of the function. It should give me, it should load the different, oh yeah, this is where the problem is. Function arguments, and then functions call, it should append functions call. Oh, not sure where the error is. So if response message tool calls, for tool call in response message tool calls, it should print the tool. And then the next bit, it should give me the tool call function name. It should also load the different tool call arguments, and it should append the name and the arguments. Not sure what the error is. Function to call. Oh, is right. Okay, I'm not sure what the error is, but the other bit will be now. So once you have the LLM called here, the next bit will be, I'll try and figure out what the error is, but the next bit will be now, once you have the tool called, the next bit will be how then do you do the conversion of the tool. So how do you convert to LLM tool, basically. So then you have your tool here, and then you can be able to, so it will just give you the tool schema. So basically you just want to be able to get like what is the response, like what basically how does the tool look like, right? So you want to get the tool schema, and then you want it to be the type you want it is a function, and then the name will be the tool name. Yeah, so then the next bit will be the function. So the tool name will be the tool name, then you have the tool description, and then the parameters. So you can have the parameters, I'm guessing the properties will be tool.input schema, and then you have the properties in here. Yeah, I guess that's it. And then closing brackets, this as well, and then that. And then for this, what we want it to return is the tool schema. I'm still wondering what error I made. So let me see if there's any question. Can you still, for testing or practice, who is responsible for the LLM to choose which tool to use? So as you've seen, we've already, I don't think this code will work because I'm not sure what the error here is. But the idea is once you've been able to define your different tools, so from the server, we have a tool, right? So then from the client, we can be able to call in the tool that we need. So you can be able to list the available tools. So basically, where you're defining the tools is from the server. And then now you can have things like resources, and then we have prompt template where you can now figure out what exactly to be, where it can be able to now figure out what tools to call. Function to call. Yeah, I'm still not sure what the error here is. I'll figure it out. And then the next question is there an MCP servers repository for Microsoft? Yes, I'll share that. We have MCP server. We have our GitHub for the different MCP servers. So I'll share that out. It appears calling the LLM multiple. For example, it appears that calling the LLM multiple calls for the same tool use in a session is costly. So what you can be able to do is, for this is where cache comes in. So the question is, how do you ensure you're saving money when using LLMs? So the idea behind it is you can be able to do something called caching your, like it runs before you can cache in the data. Is the server running? Yes, my server is running. Thank you for sharing this. We recently started integrating Cloud MCP, and we're using Fast API as the middleware to handle LLM integrations. I still haven't integrated with Azure. That's okay. You can get started with Azure. And then the last name, the list name, response message. I'm seeing all the messages to help me debug. Oh yeah, this is also probably wrong. Still, it's not debugging. I'm not sure where I'm getting this error because it's a syntax error. Oh, I can ask ChatGPT for help, right? I can ask Copilot. Let me just ask. You can use any of the different models. So what's the error in my code about? Yeah, so so that you can move past this. But then the idea behind this is once you've been able to add in your LLM, then the next bit is adding in your MCP to your VS Code. So VS Code is an MCP host. And how you can do that is using the mcp.json. And here, the bug trailing the comma is the token OS environment. Okay, let's see. So it's telling me the error is around the token. Token, GitHub token. Okay. Do I need to remove that? I don't know. So it's telling me the error is with the token, but it's still no. It still doesn't fix the error. So the endpoint is listed very well. The model name is also listed. Let me see. So I defined the endpoint and then the credential. So defined, yeah, everything is well defined. The completions client, to define the token. Going to also add in a comma here. And then that. Yeah, I'm not sure what the error is about. We'll figure it out. But then the idea is now, once you've been able to add in your LLM, you can come into your mcp.json and then add in your different servers. So you can be able to see, I have 2 different servers. I'll be able to explain all these different MCP servers. But the first one is the command to add 2 numbers, and it has 1 tool. So you can be able to edit the configuration. If you want to edit the configuration, if you want to restart the server and everything, you can do so under the mcp.json file. So if the server is being, the transport type is stdio, I'm using Python to run the server file. So the idea behind this is once I come to my Copilot, so if I come here and shift it to agent mode, and then in agent mode, I can add, so with agent mode, you already have the LLM already in place. So technically, you can just use it without an LLM defined because the LLM I've defined is also, I've added an LLM here. So you can see we have the MCP server running, which is add 2 numbers. So if I come here and do calculate, let me start a new chart, calculate the sum of that number and this. So the idea is it should be able to ask me if I need to use a specific tool, right? So it should come in and ask me, okay, interesting. They just done it without asking me. Okay, let's try it again. Add 33 and this. Yep. So let's see if it will ask. It still does, it still runs without asking me a question. Okay, good thing I had additional demos prepared. So this was the first demo to just show you how you can be able to add in your LLM functions to call. Everyone is trying to figure out what the issue is. Yeah, that's the problem. I can't still find the issue. Function to call is still okay. Yeah. So I'll show you another example. I'll figure this out before the end of the call, but I'll show you another example. So in this example, the idea behind it is to be able to use an MCP tool to basically what the MCP does is to be able to play music on Spotify. So the server is a fast MCP server, and I'm using Apple Script to be able to perform the different commands. So I have different tools. So the first tool is to be able to play music, and this is the function to have it play music. The other one is to be able to shift to the next track. Can also be able to pause music. It can be able to go to the previous track. Can be able to get the current track and what else? What else? Volume. So it has another tool to set volume and so on and so forth. So for this, I built it using AI Toolkit. So I'll show you that how you can be able to build it with AI Toolkit. So I have the extension somewhere here, the AI Toolkit extension. So the extension it has access to different models. So that's the first thing you do. You add in your own model. I'm using GitHub models for this. I also have models in Azure AI Foundry. I've added Olama models locally, and I've also added additional custom models. So what it does is you have the agent builder, which is this playground that I have open. And what the agent builder does is you can be able to create your own agent. And when you're creating your own agent, you give it probably an idea of what it should be able to do. So this is the prompt that it's supposed to do. I've just given it like basically you can be able to run the next song and everything. And then the other bit is to add tools, right? So you add tools via an MCP server. So this is my server, and the tools I've added is basically the Spotify tools. So you can be able to play music, pause music, set volume and everything. And then the output, this is now the structure of the output, which I want it to be in text format. So the code behind all this is the server.py code. This is the entire code that I'm using to be able to run the MCP server here. So if I give it an example, so I don't want to be flagged by YouTube. So I'll just ask it to play any copyright free music. And the idea behind it is it will be able to run. So you can be able to see the prompt that you can see just play the music. So it gives me the copyright, it gives the query, then it gives the different tool response, and then the model response. So the model response will be now playing copyright music, and then this will be the tool response. If I go to my terminal, and then let me see if it will give me the output. So if I go to AI Toolkit, it should be able to give me the output. So this is what happened. So I've been able to connect it to the MCP server, and this is the different MCP server it's connected to. Then I did the query. So the query was copyright free music, and the tool it called was to play music, and it called it with the arguments play copyright free music. And this is now the response of the tool. So yeah, the content, the text, it's what it's doing is playing copyright free music, and the error here is false. So that's an example of how you can be able to use your LLM and AI toolkit. So for this, I've added the LLM directly in the AI toolkit, AI builder playground, and then I've been able to also add in the system prompt. I can be able to do the same as well on VS Code, on GitHub Copilot. So if I do a new chat and then I do the same thing, probably this time play copyright. I call two tools, right? Play copyright free music at 50% volume, at 50 volume, basically. So what it will do, it will probably call two different tools. So let's see it working. So let me see if the tools are added again. MCP servers. Yeah, so the tools are here. So you can see we have the Spotify local running, and then we have the add to numbers running. So this is the command that's telling me to run. So it will set the volume output to 50, and then it will play copyright-free music. So I've asked it to continue, and then this is now what's happening in the background. And then this is what happened on my, I'm hearing music, but I can't see it. So I'm trying to figure out where the music is coming from because it's not the Spotify. So let me try it again. Volume set 50. Yeah, it saved the music to an MP3 file. So probably I need to define, okay, play copyright-free music on Spotify. Probably that's what was missing because it basically downloaded the music. And then so it will still do the same thing. It will just go in, reduce the volume again, and give me the tools. So that's an example of using AI Toolkit. So again, this is where we're adding the model. We can change around the models, and then you can be able to have everything running and playing. And you can see the tokens used in this case was just 8 tokens. Okay, and then the last example, which I had was using Microsoft Docs. So for this example, we already have a Microsoft Docs server. So you can be able to, under my, let me be able to say it, under my extension, I have an extension, I don't remember where that extension is. Let me see. Yes, the extensions tab, which shows me the extensions that I've already installed. So you can be able to see the different, it shows me the different MCP servers I've already installed. These are MCP servers that come preloaded with, that you can use with VS Code. So there's the Microsoft Docs server, and you can add in the different MCP servers that you can add in with VS Code. So you can go in and add them there, right? So the idea behind it was I already had the MCP Docs server added, but it could only perform one thing, which was, let me show you, MCP servers, with servers. No, let me show you under tools. So if I come here under the tools, agent, under tools, you can see I have 2 Microsoft Docs MCP server. So the first one has just, the idea behind it is to just fetch the different documents. Then the second one has more functionality. So this one just fetches the documents and searches through it. But I wanted to get more and more robust output. So I wanted it to give me code examples, give me API references, and also to give me documentation content. So what I did is I built an MCP server. So this is the server itself. This is the connection to the docs endpoint. This is the server.py. So you can be able to see the different tools that I've been able to create. So you can be able to, search the documentation, content, find code examples, and so much more. Get documentation categories, and so much more. And then under the client is now where I added my LLM client. So this is, I'm using GitHub models, I'm using GPT-4o. This is the definition of my LLM client. I've been able to have it to give me the response in the messages, functions to call again. And then this is the code. I think I should just copy paste this code to the other one. And then this is it converting the output to LLM tools, and then now connecting with the different tools available, the different resources available, and I can be able to run it. So if I come down and run it here, so again, I'm guessing the tool is already added. I've used MCP.json running it here. So if I come here and ask, how do I build? Okay, there's a question that someone asked. Let me ask how authentic. No, don't think we have authentication. There's a question around Azure that someone asked before. Is it possible to get, for testing practices? Someone asked a question about Azure and okay, how does the Azure MCP tool work? I don't know if we have an Azure MCP tool. Let me just check and see if it will give me the right output. So I've asked that question. I don't know if it will use the reference I wanted to use. No, it's not. using Azure Summary Topic. So it's using just the already implemented Azure. No. So this is not using the tool I've asked. Using Microsoft Docs. Explain how the Azure MCP works. Okay, let's see which will use the reference I wanted to use. So the other option would be for me to remove, yeah, it's still using at Azure. So the other option would be for me, oh, good, it's used now, the docs. Yeah, it's used the docs tools. So the other option would be for me to edit the tools because I know I already have Azure tools in here. So I have the GitHub Copilot for Azure, which is using its MCP server. And then, yeah, that's the one that's being called here. And then, so it's still fetching the docs, trying to see if we can be able to fetch the docs. And then what else? Still doing a start on the doc. And then I'm guessing the last one would be, yeah. So now it's giving me the output based on the documentation, the Microsoft Docs documentation. Yeah, so that's basically how you can be able to integrate. So this one already has the LLM integration. You can be able to see the entire integration here. And that's how you can be able to integrate it to your applications. I'm not sure what's the error. Let's see. This error is still, the error is still there. Not supposed to be under the client.llm.py. I'm not sure why it gets this error. Print. Let me see. Let me see if I can replace this code with this. Nope. Nope. The error still persists. Yeah, I'll fix the code and then I'll update everything. Yeah, but that's it about how you can be able to integrate your LLMs with MCP. So the best practices is, select the tools using the tool speaker. So there's a limit of how many tools you can be able to use when you're using your GitHub Copilot. So you should be able to go in there and figure out which tools you want to use, which tools do you not want to use, right? So that you can be able to set them, you can be able to make maximize use of your tools, what you've been able to add. The next bit is create boundaries for your LLMs. So you need to be able to define exactly what your LLM should be able to do and create boundaries for them. So in this, where we have the system message, let me see if we have a system message here. Yeah. So in this, where you have a system message, this is where you can be able to even define what your LLM is supposed to do and the limits it can be able to go through. And then the other bit is authenticate where possible. Ensure you always authenticate. It's not right to give the MCP server access to everything. So ensure it only has access to what it needs. Ensure you also authenticate whenever possible. And then you can also use policies. So when you're using GitHub Enterprise or different GitHub applications, there's a way you can be able to add in policies. Even on VS Code, you can be able to add policies to determine what access the MCP server should have. And then I'm guessing while I was asking the questions, you could be able to see like the LLM prompting me and asking me, is this what you want to use, and so on and so forth. So those are policies set in place to ensure it does not misuse the tools available. Yeah, and that's it. So if you want access to all the resources, there's a link. It also has access to our Discord channel. I think I have, how many minutes do I have left? It's now 4:23 my time, so I have about 7 minutes. So let me go back answering your questions. If you need all the resources, you can get them from there. So we may need an MCP security presentation we may need an MCP security presentation. Yeah, that's something we actually need to have. Thank you for sharing this. The listener, okay. Explain the difference between A2A and MCP protocols. So MCP is basically, as I've said, it's an idea behind how you can be able to give context to your AI applications and to your AI models. A2A, on the other hand, is more around agents. So when you're dealing with building your agent applications, the agent-to-agent protocol is designed to enable the collaborations between AI agents. So for MCP, this figures out how you are able to grant access to basically different AI applications, regardless of what the AI application is. But then A2A is solely for agents. How does authentication work in MCP? So when you're when you're implementing your MCP, you have different servers. So we have different servers that you can be able to use. The recommended one is the STDIO server, and then we also have probably the HTTP server that you can be able to use. SCP is not recommended, so that's how you can be able to communicate with different MCP servers. You will need to authenticate. So for example, as I mentioned for let me show you the server that we built. Yeah, this one. This is the Spotify server. I'm using Apple script to be able to go in, do the authentication and every details around how it's run in the background. So that's how I'm able to implement it. But then for other servers, you will need to probably add in some auth in there or add in different, different security in there. Yeah, I'm not very good with security, but I'm also learning. What role could MCP play in bringing structured APIs with emergent LLMs reasoning capabilities in hybrid structures? So what I'm getting, the question you're asking is basically, how does MCP play a role when you're using LLMs that have reasoning capabilities? And then when you mention hybrid architecture, that's where I'm lost. But I'm guessing the idea behind MCP is basically to connect your LLM, to connect your tools, and to connect everything in one place, right? So that's the idea behind MCP. So if you have like structured APIs, if you have your LLM, you can be able to bring them together to work together to perform something. So instead of an LLM just giving you a response, you can add in additional context to give you a better response to it. There's a lot of questions around if the session will be available. Yes, the session will be available. You can be able to access it later. So yes, everyone is talking about security. Yes, I will learn and then I'll come back and present something around it or ask my teammates from the other side if we can be able to have a session on security. I noticed that some of the LLM APIs have function calling capabilities these days. When is it appropriate for me to implement an MCP server compared to the function calling of an LLM? So function calling is basically the idea behind function calling is to get structured outputs of from an LLM. So for example, and let me this one. So when you come here and choose the output format, you can get the output as a schema. Then you can prepare like the schema you want for your LLM to give as an output. The idea behind function calling was to be able to give you, like, if you want to interact with a specific API, so it gives, so the LLM will give a specific output that will go into the API, and then the API will now give you a response. So, for example, if you wanted to check the weather, so it will, from the question the user asked, it will get the location, and then it will give the location to the API and then give you an output from there. So I'm not sure if ideally, function calling is still part of most of the GPTs, I'm guessing, and it just gives you, like, it helps you define the schema and everything. So if you want to integrate, I'm guessing it will help you integrate when you, like, for example, for this, it gives the schema is very good in terms of it goes directly to the model, to the tools, and tells it to just play copyright-free music. And the tool will be probably, let me see if I can get the output there. Terminal output, yeah. So you can be able to see. So these are the tools available. So it goes directly to the tool, play music, and it gives it, query, play copyright-free music, and that's it. But then the idea of function calling is specifically for it to like give you like the name, the parameters, and the return types and things like that. So yeah, and then it's like when you're ordering food, API, yeah. So many people are giving responses to this. GitHub, everything is on the link here, the repo that I've used and everything else you need. You can just use this link. The MCP, yes. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think I've answered all the questions. So if you need all the resources, all the questions, you can get them from this link. And then the one resource I will always advertise will be the MCP for Beginners repo. So we have a repo to just do MCP for Beginners. Let me see if I can be able to access it. But then this is the MCP for Beginners repo. It has some good content on security as well. It has some good content around how you can be able to implement security and the different MCP best practices. So like what you will be able to look out for when you're dealing with MCP in terms of security. Yeah, but that's it from my end. Thank you so much for joining me for this journey. A lot of questions. So glad to hear them, but thank you so much. Back to you, Larissa.
Thank you, Bethany. Thank you for the content of today's session. And thank you all for joining us today. We are always looking to improve our sessions and our experience. So if you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. And we are also taking notes of all of your suggestion for future content here at the Reactor. You can find the link on the screen or in the chat. We'll see you in the next one.